The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi there. Thanks for joining our webinar today titled Fast Track Your Airport SMS Lessons from Milwaukee Mitchell International Airport. I'm Nick Frank, producer at Trimble, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. Before I hand it off to our speakers, I do have a few housekeeping items to get to. Our webinar today should take just about an hour. That does include Q&A portion at the end. To make sure we keep the flow of the webinar, all attendees will be on mute for the duration of the presentation. Now, you can submit questions at any time in the Q&A panel, and our presenters will get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and the video along with the slides will be available in the next 3 to 5 days. We do have a poll question as well coming up, so please participate in that. And then stick around after the conclusion of the presentation for a post-webinar survey. We're always looking for your feedback on ways to improve. Now, before we dive into today's presentation, we do want to launch our first poll of the day is, what is the status of building out your safety management system? That is the top topic for the day. So put in your information. Is it fully complete? Is it in progress? Have you not started yet? Or maybe do you need a little bit of help putting together your safety management system? So please put in your votes for this. I'll give you about 10-15 seconds here to do that, and then we will continue on with our presentation. This will be good information for our presenters to know and maybe able to touch on it later in the presentation. Give you about 5 more seconds here. All right, thank you everybody for participating. We'll get our presenters up on the screen here. First, we've got Tim Pearson. He's a geographic information systems professional with extensive experience in enterprise GIS development, the CityWorks asset management system, and the airport industry. He is an airport certified employee with a specialty in operations. Tim was instrumental in certifying CityWorks functions for automated FAA Part 139 reporting. He's an advocate for leveraging GIS technology in support of airport data management and CityWorks as a foundation for airport operations, maintenance management, reporting, and as a safety management. Eve McCall is the director of Microsoft's Airport Industry Innovation for the U.S., aligned to the national, state, and local government practice. She's recently elected to the Airport Council's International North America Business Information Technology Steering Group and has been an active participant of aviation conferences and the ACI World Airport IT Standing Committee over the last 4 years, presenting on topics such as sustainability, digital twins, cybersecurity, and hybrid cloud feasibility. She also is a World Business Partner co-lead of the ACI North American Data Analytics Working Group, supporting airports on various data AI objectives to improve operational efficiency, maximize revenue per passenger, and most importantly, enhance the traveler experience. And John Green is the Director of Airport Solutions for Trimble's owner and public sector. With more than 20 years of aviation industry experience, John has served in various roles, including Aviation Business Development Manager, Aviation Program Project Manager, and Military Airfield Manager at several locations in the U.S. and internationally, while on active duty in the United States Air Force. John is also a certified project management professional. And with that, I will hand it off to John.
Great, thank you, Nick. And first off, thank you for all the callers for calling in today to learn about this wonderful team that we have with Microsoft and Tim Pearson from Milwaukee Airport. I would like to mention that this is the first of 3 aviation-focused webinars that we will be doing with Microsoft. This first one today is obviously focused on SMS, or safety management systems. That's a new requirement from the FAA. But the other 2 will be aviation related, but with a little bit a different flavor. And we hope that you all call in for that next one. So how we're going to structure this webinar is I'm going to open it up and talk about asset lifecycle management at a high level. And then I'll hand it over to Tim Pearson for the SMS focus. And then Eve McCall will close up with their data security capabilities through Microsoft. So first off, you can see on the screen here the Asset Lifecycle Management solutions from Trimble. And what is Airport Asset Lifecycle Management? For many years, airport leaders and their business partners have made do with legacy paper-based processes and antiquated systems pieced together through just disjointed workflows using multiple sources of often unreliable data. And it's no wonder that these outdated methods and technologies have dampened productivity and driven up costs. Airport Asset Lifecycle Management is a process of connecting all phases of the asset lifecycle, which includes plan, design, build, operate, and maintain, using a single source of accurate data across integrated workflows that streamline the handoffs from one team to another. This unified process improves efficiency and productivity while reducing waste and rework at every phase so that projects can finish on time and on budget. In addition, this full lifecycle perspective enables a proactive and coordinated approach to asset maintenance with well-timed, cost-saving preventative actions that reduce the need for expensive, disruptive major repairs. And our secret sauce at Trimble is we can support every aspect of the asset lifecycle, from design, build, operate, maintain. And we do that by digitally transforming an organization. Next slide, please. Now, successful airport asset lifecycle management starts with digitally transforming each phase of a lifecycle and then connecting them all together in a seamless ecosystem of integrated people, processes, and information. To support this transformation, interconnected digital technologies redefine each lifecycle phase. Now, why should we digitize asset lifecycle management? Well, today's focus is on safety. Safety is a #1 priority in the aviation industry. And for the folks on this call, most of you work at an airport and you know how crucial safety is, because you have the flying public coming to your facility. And the last thing that we want is a safety mishap to occur. So digitizing the process to maintain your assets at the airport increases that efficiency for safety. Another aspect of it is compliance. SMS used to be a recommendation from the FAA, and now, as we all know, it's a requirement. And our CityWorks solution can fulfill that requirement, can meet the needs of the software solution for SMS. Also, aging infrastructure is a reason to digitize your ALM. Not every runway is brand new, not every taxiway is brand new, and we know that you probably have new projects coming down the pipe that you need to ensure that the new asset is maintained appropriately. And so instead of using a paper-based system or a spreadsheet, it's ideal to use a technology solution to manage it efficiently. And finally, with the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's new funding available for major infrastructure projects. And you should consider asset management during the design build of a project to get to ORAT more efficiently, operational readiness and transition. And that'll actually be the topic of the second webinar we're doing with Microsoft here in a few weeks. Next slide, please. So proactive versus reactive asset lifecycle management is important to me. Nick mentioned that I was a military airfield manager for over 20 years. And so I've seen several airfields, some in great shape and some in terrible shape. And I always tried to be proactive with how we manage the airfield, with the facilities. And on that left picture there, you see a clean runway. Everything looks good for the most part. And that's the goal, proactive maintenance. That middle picture there shows the shoulder on the edge of a runway. And you can see a little gap there. And so just to paint the picture for you, this was at a military airfield, a dual runway operation. The primary runway was closed while this photo was taken due to major infrastructure repairs. And so this was the second runway was the only available runway at the time. So this ball, if you will, started out as about a 1-inch gap. And so we processed the work order, paper process, hand carried around to coordinate it and get approval for repair. And during the week of coordination to get that done, it went from 1 inch to this. And so me being the airfield manager, I got the civil engineers involved, and I said, let's take a look and see what's going on here. This is concerning to me. And so they looked at it, and apparently there was a drainage pipe under the runway, and the joints of the pipe were eroded, therefore causing erosion all around the failed pipe, which caused about a 1 foot void or gap under the runway, which is very concerning, because we're having very heavy aircraft coming in, C5, C-17s, max gross weight. And so this immediately led to me to get a recommendation from the engineers. Do we need to can we keep the runway open, or do we have to close it to repair this? And they quickly said, you need to close this right now. I mean, and so we closed it, had to make the repairs, but as I mentioned, the primary runway was already closed. And so I like to tell this story because it's a safety related issue, but it shows you how I had no idea, and the engineers had no idea of the criticality of the asset under the runway and when it needed to be repaired or inspected, because it was on a paper somewhere in a file cabinet, the asset information. So that just tells you a story of why you need to digitize it, why you need to speed up the process. You never know what's lurking under your runway, and you definitely don't want to have to close both of your runways and stop operations. Otherwise, your airport just becomes a shopping mall. If you don't have the runway, all you have is a place for people to go shopping and sit around. So let's be proactive. Next slide, please. So today, I gave you a little overview of asset lifecycle management as a whole. Our focus again is safety. And if you can click the animation there. So we're going to focus on the operations and maintenance portion of the Trimble Asset Lifecycle Management portfolio, which is via CityWorks. CityWorks is an asset management solution. And again, you could manage your SMS system through CityWorks. And Tim Pearson, our champion for CityWorks. Fun fact, CityWorks, Milwaukee is the first airport to adopt CityWorks back in, I think, 2009 or 10. So Tim, we really appreciate you being here today, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say. And thank you very much, Tim, and hand it over to you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Let me start out with a little bit of history of how we got to where we're at right now. We have been an Esri GIS platform client since '96. We had a desktop application, and like most of you that deal with GIS, we started out with converting a number of engineering CAD files over to the GIS format, just for creating maps for our own internal uses. We spent many years collecting data and building up our GIS repository. Then in 2009, after a lengthy GIS needs analysis, we decided to enhance our system. We implemented an enterprise GIS platform. We migrated a great deal of our data over to the FAA's 18B standard. At the same time, we were looking to replace, essentially, as John had mentioned before, a number of paper-based processes at the airport, one of them being our work order system. And we were introduced to CityWorks. We thought it was an ideal solution for what we needed. In 2010, we implemented CityWorks, and as John said, we were the first airport to put it in place. And we learned quite quickly that we could do an awful lot with it. We leveraged the CityWorks application, as I'll explain momentarily, into being our digital logbook for operations, our work order system, our preventative maintenance processes, and of course, our 139 process. To date, just over 250,000 logbook entries in our system and closer to about 80,000 work orders. In 2013, we received FAA approval for the use of CityWorks for our 139 work processes and automated 139 reporting. It does all of our heavy lifting with regards to the 139 process. Not long after that, we were approached by deputy director who had a great deal of forethought. The FAA was starting to talk about safety management. He was very proactive and reached out to us and asked a very direct question about whether we thought that we could hold the SMS data and information within our existing repository. And the short answer was, of course, yes, we could. In 2015, we've started our SMS configurations, and in 2016, we introduced our SMS program. We've been live with our SMS program using CityWorks since then. Next slide, please. So the question that I get asked a great deal by airports is how we chose CityWorks in the first place. We had a large investment in GIS data technology. CityWorks to this day is still the only GIS-centric asset management application out there. And it contains essentially 3 components, modules, however you want to classify them. Service requests, essentially a call center functionality, work orders, and inspections. And if you're not familiar with the software, each of those components are actually tied together. Service requests can be linked to work orders, inspections can be linked to work orders, etc. So it's very versatile in that manner. It has mobile capabilities. Every one of our ops coordinator vehicles on the airfield has a laptop or a tablet in it. Every one of our maintenance supervisors carries a tablet. Anybody who inspects within the terminal has a tablet with them, all seamlessly connected to one centralized system. The application has some very robust APIs, allowing us to connect to other applications if we need to. But what will be important in this conversation is the things that we can feed from other applications into CityWorks. It also contains a very powerful reporting component embedded right in the application and Crystal Reports. Of course, with improvements to the technology today, there are many reporting applications that could be used out there. But the most important part of the application to me and to an airport looking to use this type of application, and for the subject today, is the configurability of the software. It can be configured with XML or HTML, and I say configure as opposed to customize. We're not customizing the software, we're not changing it in any way, we're just changing the look and feel of how it's used. That functionality alone allowed us to leverage the service request side of the application, that call center functionality, to be a digital logbook at our airport. And as John mentioned, replacing all those paper processes was a priority for us. We had 18 different forms, a number of reports, Excel spreadsheets, access tables, and of course, the wonderful paper logbook. Our operations center currently is paperless. We have not used paper in our operations center for almost 13 years. Next slide, please. So how does this relate to SMS in the subject today? The same workflows that I talked about just a second ago, that connectivity between logbook capabilities or service requests and work orders, inspections and work orders, we analyzed, essentially flowcharted the SMS processes, the integration of information. How is information fed to our safety manager? What do we do with that information? How are these issues that are coming into us mitigated? Looking at construction projects and creating hazards and analyzing those hazards and putting risk analysis to them, assessing our program and creating corrective actions that go along with them. All these workflows are the exact same workflows that we're using, or we were using, within our day-to-day processes using CityWorks. So we felt that we could leverage the technology for our SMS program. Again, robust metrics capabilities and reporting, and as the software improves, I'll mention this later on, the improvement in the analytics and the data that you can get back out of the system grows exponentially. Of course, security is always part of an issue with any of this. So the permission capabilities within the application allow us to restrict who has access to different components, who can see the SMS items, and who can access and manage those things. Next slide, please. So how do we get this information into the system? When I talk about issues, you have to realize that we are already collecting within our logbook information on incidents, accidents, property damage, hazmat spills, incursions, near misses, etc. And that is why the director brought it to our attention. He said, if we're already tracking all these things in CityWorks, and these are things that are going to feed our safety program, why can't we use CityWorks to leverage that program and that functionality? One other thing that we're tracking within our CityWorks application are construction projects. The who, what, when, where, and why of every construction project that happens at the airport is logged in CityWorks. It can be associated to a location on the airfield, and we can collect information about who's the project manager, where the project's taking place, who's the contractor, contact information, etc. All that is already in our application. Next slide. Now, because of that, we had to figure out how to transition this information from being an incident entry, like we'd seen on the last slide, to be an SMS entry in the system. Now, operations will log information about an accident or incident, but not all that information is pertinent to the safety manager. So what we have done is we trigger our system that when certain entries are closed, when those incidents, accidents, property damage, et cetera, are closed in our system, that the application automatically creates an SMS entry. It takes specific information from that entry and loads it into an SMS entry for use by our safety manager and the SMS committee. So pertinent pieces of information are passed across here. Now, that works for things like accidents, incidents, hazmat spills, things that we're tracking. But what about those things that we're not tracking? We've allowed any of our tenants or employees, if they want to report something that they feel is a safety issue, they can easily call operations, and operations could hand enter the information that they provide. But we've taken it one step further. Next slide, please. We have a form-based web app to allow entry of information directly into the CityWorks application. So any tenants or employees could go to the Mitchell Airport webpage, and there is a link at the bottom of the page to our safety management system and our hazard reporting form, and they could choose from a select group types of issues, anywhere from behavior to a near miss to an environmental issue, enter the pertinent information about what they've seen. For example, maybe they saw a team working on the airfield and they were going down into a manhole without the proper PPE equipment. They could report on that information, either anonymously, or they could provide their information as part of the entry and submit that to our safety manager. Now, the benefit of this type of entry system is that these forms are linked directly to the CityWorks database and to the code lists that you see on the screen that are contained within each of these forms. They're linked directly to the code lists in our CityWorks application. So we can make changes to any of the subjects, any of the drop-down lists in one location and feed it directly to the web page. So we're updating our system as we go. So multiple ways of getting issues submitted into our system. So they can come automatically, they can come by a call into operations, or they can come through the web app. And if a person does submit something through the web app and they've entered their caller information or their contact information, that information is passed over on the submission right into that entry. It's held within that entry so that the safety manager can reach back out to that person and let them know how the investigation's going, what they found, whether they've closed the issue out, etc. Next slide, please. Now, what I just described was how we get just basic day-to-day issues into the system. Something that's much more important, well, I think of it as much more important, especially at this time in our airport. We have a number of construction projects going on, is how do we track hazard mitigation out on our construction projects? We track all of our construction projects. They are recorded in the CityWorks application as I said before, who's the project manager, which construction firm is working, contact information, what are the dates of the project, etc. And those construction projects are linked to the map, to an actual polygon representing the boundaries of that construction project. Now, prior to any construction project going on my airfield or any other airfield, is a safety plan, is an SRM, is an evaluation of potential risks and potential hazards that could happen during that process. We have the ability within our application, once that committee gets together and analyzes that project and determines perhaps that construction project is taking place next to a wetland area, or there's a risk of us cutting FAA cables, or perhaps we're in an area where during that part of the season we're going to have a high level of FOD. So we can look at all the hazards or potential hazards to go along with that construction project, and pre-project, we can create an entry for each one of those hazard types in our system, link them directly to the construction project, and then allow the safety management team or the project manager handling that project track and monitor all of those issues. And then, of course, centrally located in one system, we can report on any of that information. Next slide, please. So when that information is transferred over, whether it's a hazard or an issue, specifically if it's a hazard, you can see in the upper right-hand side of the screen there, our SMS hazard. It allows the safety manager to apply the initial risk being reported, the severity, the likelihood of what the issue is going to be, and apply a risk ranking to it and what we're going to do to it. What is our mitigation going to be? Now, when we built our system originally, all of this analysis or the entry of this information is all done by hand. But as the application has vastly improved over the years, you could be selecting the level of severity and the likelihood and the system itself based on analytics capabilities, OpEx, all the different new components to the CityWorks application will allow you to run these analytics and this analysis for you behind the scenes. And it will determine your risk ranking without you having to do any handiwork in there. And of course, anything that we're tracking is of course available via the map. We've mapped every logbook entry or every work order, the location of everything that is being entered into the system. Next slide, please. So before I get to the analysis of our program, our assessment of our program, let me call it that, how is all this information managed? So we have an SMS manager. He works with an SMS team, which is comprised of both our operations center, some members of maintenance, also members of Milwaukee County Risk Management, all working together. They review SMS submissions, those issues that come in. Some are determined to be raised to a level that there is some mitigation required. And when I say mitigation, I don't necessarily mean a repair has to take place. At times, a repair is needed, but not always. Sometimes that mitigation is retraining. Sometimes that mitigation is rewriting of an SOP or a change of policy. Also, some of those issues need to be elevated to a hazard that we need to monitor and track long term. All of that can be done within the system. This group is also responsible for the creation and tracking of those mitigations. They're also responsible for the assessment and audit of our program and any corrective actions that come along with that, which I'll get to in just a moment. And they're responsible for the development of any metrics and any reporting that goes off to the director and the accountable executives at the airport, to the county risk management, to our insurance providers, to any number of entities out there. Next slide. Now, because of the capabilities within the system, that connectivity between the service requests, the work orders, and the inspections, and our ability to reconfigure that connectivity to show connections between issues that are coming in mitigations that are taking place, audits and inspections, which I'll get to in a second, and those corrective actions that are needed. Because of our ability to configure the system, we can contain all of that information in the same repository that holds our daily logbook information, our daily work orders, and our daily preventative maintenance inspections and airfield inspections. So what the safety manager would look like, what their inbox of the system would look like, is essentially a listing of all those submissions as they come in live, the analysis of the hazards. This is just a potential screenshot of what you would see, and the mitigations. And remember when I said mitigation might not necessarily mean a repair, we have a number of pre-built mitigations put into the system. Whether we have to close an asset for something or close a runway for something, it needs engineering review. It's a maintenance issue or an ops issue, et cetera. Or if there's some level of preliminary hazard assessment that needs to go along with that issue. Next slide, please. So again, a look at the custom configurations that we can put into the system. So we can track custom fields for that analysis of our initial risk rankings. We can also, in the bottom left-hand corner, do things like built-in KPIs. How long does it take us to mitigate an issue? How long does it take us to complete work? How long are some of these issues left in pending because we're waiting on parts or supplies or a contractor or an engineering review? How long does it take to close these issues? We're tracking KPIs on things like that. Next slide, please. And one of the most important parts of our entire program is an audit of our program every year. Annually, we do 2 audits. We do an internal self-audit, I guess it should say biannually up there, or semi-annually. We do 2 audits. One is an internal self-audit performed by the SMS committee at the airport. It looks at our entire program. We are using the inspection component within the CityWorks application to build out this audit. If we find a problem with this, we can quickly create a corrective action, and that corrective action might mean anything from a change to documentation, rewriting of an SOP, retraining, change to policies and procedures, change to how we promote the system, etc. And we use the work order component of the software to build those corrective actions, and they can be linked directly to that assessment and audit. Now, I said we do it twice a year. Once we do it ourselves as an internal. The second audit is performed externally. It might be risk management from Milwaukee County. It might be risk management from one of the surrounding counties or another municipality that we bring in to audit our program. Or if we're lucky, it might be the safety manager from O'Hare or Madison who's come in to look at it. Next slide, please. So that in a nutshell was essentially how we use the CityWorks application on a day-to-day basis to handle SMS within our system. Granted, we've been using our system this way for 7 years. And just now the FAA has come out with standards and guidelines for building your program. So you might be starting from scratch, or you might have a program in place. When we started, some of the things that we learned as we went along was be sure that you identify and include that SMS manager early on. When we started to build our system, we spent 6 months of configuring and setting up a program without having a safety manager in place. So the fear is that if you do that as you go along and you don't have a safety manager there, that you may end up making changes to your program later on. Be sure that you educate the SMS manager as to the capabilities of your system, in our case, CityWorks, so that they understand the application. It is also inherent that that SMS manager understands the inner workings of the airport. The larger the entity is, so an O'Hare, an Atlanta, a Charlotte, Dallas, Fort Worth, those airports most likely will have an SMS manager on staff. As that airport starts to get smaller, it's more likely that you might have someone who's provided to you by risk management from the county that supports you or the city that supports you. And the smaller the airport gets, the more likelihood that you might be dependent on a contractor to help you with your SMS program. So ensure that not only that manager is literate, not just to SMS, but literate to the airport. Ensure that they're educated about the functionalities of the airport and how things work there. In particular, select a software solution that's flexible. I say that because CityWorks is probably the most flexible application I've ever worked with in the GIS industry and asset management. You can tailor this application to do almost anything you want, and that's what's allowed us to use it as an SMS solution. It has an open database. We can pull data from any of the tables in the system for reporting and metrics. It's wonderful. A key point, do not implement your software in a vacuum. I say that very carefully. Do not let, my apologies, higher ups drive the direction of where you're going. Ensure that you have the buy-in of ops and maintenance and those that are strategically involved with the data that's going to feed your SMS. Make sure that they're involved. Of note, currently, we're reviewing our current program since the new standards have been issued. We're ensuring that it meets the FAA standard. Right now, we feel that we're at about 85 to 90%. The biggest addition that we will have to make to our program is the inclusion of some current 139 items as SMS trackable items, and a couple additional reports that might be included, but we feel that probably before the end of this year, maybe as early as August or September, that we will submit our plan to the FAA. We're also evaluating the improvements that are made to the software. CityWorks just released a brand new version, which has more web app capabilities. It's built more in an app platform. There are enhancements to risk analysis and reporting that are constantly being added to the application. So we're also evaluating the application for improvements to help streamline things. This is the point where I say, well, that's our system. If you'd like to see it, if you'd like to talk about our CityWorks application, our 139 processes, how we use CityWorks, or you want to see how we've got it built, reach out to me. One thing I would like to say, and this comes from me and not necessarily the software, that you have a great deal of opportunity here for any of the airports that are listening in, that you have a year to submit your SMS plan if you don't have SMS yet. And you have, upon approval of your plan, 3 years to implement that plan. That in itself gives you more than enough time to stand up a program. Last week, I was listening in on another webinar similar to this one, and a very good point was made by the contractor speaking at that seminar. And that was, if you want to go down this path, our recommendation, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, start with building out your logbook capabilities, building out your 139 processes, because the things that you build out there are going to feed your SMS program, and then slide yourself into SMS down the road. You have more than enough time to do all of that. So with that, I talk very fast and I ramble on about a lot of things here. So I thank you for your time and listening to me today. And again, at any time, if anybody attending today would like to see our system, talk to me or those that helped me build our system, or talk about other airports that have CityWorks, I'd be more than happy to chat with anybody at any time and show you what we have. And thank you for listening.
Thanks, Tim. This is Eve McCall with Microsoft, Managing Director of the Airport Industry Strategy. And you might all be wondering, why is Microsoft on a call, a webinar, sponsored by Trimble around safety management systems and CityWorks? And the reason for that is that Microsoft is a strategic partner of Trimble. specifically for a number of the scenarios that that Timothy just described. You can go to the next slide, please. So it's my only graphic. So the whole point here is around, how does the benefit of a platform like CityWorks, maximize value using a cloud like Azure, right? And the point is that Microsoft, through our cloud hosting capabilities, creates better security for the airport and for the software itself by leveraging a lot of our cloud native capabilities. So Tim mentioned that CityWorks is undergoing some transformation and improving their software. When you utilize software as a service like CityWorks, there are continuous improvement capabilities that benefit the airport directly rather than when you necessarily buy the product and just install it on premises. Some of the other benefits to the airport is this is obviously mission critical data that the airport is relying on, mapping data, project management, construction data, and data that you don't want to have at risk of falling into the wrong hands. So leveraging cloud capabilities and that cloud scale around securing your data estate is something that Microsoft provides to Trimble and by extension to our airport customers. So, we also help harden the data from a security posture, protecting against cybersecurity threats through such capabilities as role-based access control. So when you identify different personas and different users that can access the data that Tim described for those different use cases, leveraging that kind of role-based access enables that your greater confidence for your cybersecurity officials like your CISO to know that it's temporal, it's based on a need to know for people to have the appropriate levels of security. So these are some of the examples of why Trimble and Microsoft have partnered together. I do also want to kind of underscore the comment that Tim just made around the timeline, that if you're going to be creating a new SMS plan and you have a year to create the plan and 3 years to implement, one of those factors around the ability to deploy a solution should not be hindered through having to first stand up physical hardware in your airport environment. Leveraging software as a service means that those considerations and those requirements are actually put back on the software provider such as Trimble, leveraging cloud scale capabilities such as Azure. So I just wanted to summarize why Microsoft is here. As part of the airport community, we feel passionately about the security of the data that all airports are responsible for, particularly during this time where there is more and more federal funding supporting the extension and growth of airport systems. And Microsoft is proud to be a partner to the aviation community in securing your data. Jonathan, I'll pass the mic back to you.
Great, thank you very much, Eve, and Tim, thank you very much as well. Both outstanding presentations and very, I learned a lot, and that's why I love doing this with different clients. Because I learn something new every time I do this, and it's just, that was phenomenal. Thank you so much, and we appreciate the partnership with Microsoft. And I'd like to mention that our next Microsoft webinar is on June 8th. It'll be focused around enterprise asset management during design build of a project, and we look forward to hopefully the folks on this call to log in on that one. And yeah, we appreciate everybody's time today. If there are any questions after this, I think we're going to do a Q&A here in a minute. But if there's any questions after the Q&A, feel free to email me, jonathan_green@trimble.com. I think you're going to also get the contact information via email. Of course, you'll have our contact information through LinkedIn, and you will have some people reaching out to you after this. So having said that, Nick, did you want to lead us into the webinar or the Q&A session here?
Yeah, we've got a bit of time here, so if anyone does have any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. And if you have one for a specific person, whether it's John, Tim, or Eve, you can preface it by that. I'm thinking this one is for Tim. How long did it take for your organization to implement your SMS?
SMS took us, excuse me, SMS took us less than 9 months to configure. Probably total time in writing policies, procedures, everything else, all the background program portion of this was all going on at the same time that we were configuring the application and going back and forth between what they wanted to see in the application and how it would work. But I would say less than 9 months to implement our system. I realized that we also had a strong foundation of a lot of the information that would go into your SMS already within our repository. So we just had to figure out how to get it over to the SMS side of the system. So,
And a follow-up on that is, how long did it take your team to get up to speed on all of your new systems and softwares?
it was almost immediate. There was very little extra training involved because they're used to the workflows and used to seeing the configurations in the application. The only thing that looked different is what we call something. That XML ability or that HTML ability to change the names and titles on forms, but it's the same workflow. It's service requests or a work order or an inspection template. It's just being used in a different manner. So getting everybody up to speed on the processes and how it worked was actually quite quick.
And I think this one will also come for you. And you don't have to dive into specific costs, but what have you noticed in terms of maybe your cost benefit of the time saving or hour saving? What have you noticed on that side?
I did a cost benefit analysis of operational changes early on when we first stood up CityWorks. And we were saving in excess of $40,000 annually in paper processes and time and just arbitrary costs that you really can't tie something to. But over 13 years of using it in our operations center, I don't think I could really put a total cost on it, but we haven't used paper in our ops center in 13 years. We've added so many new staff because of the cost savings and time. So that's as close as I could come to it. So without doing a formal cost benefit analysis.
Sure. I think the notion of just those initial savings probably should hopefully give enough. Yeah, and the time.
Time is the biggest one, and the most obvious improvement with a system like this is communication. Everybody now knows what's going on. We do not have any duplicate work processes. Logbooks are connected to work processes on the airfield. People are notified of issues and incidents immediately. It's a live system, so there are no delays. Everybody is communicating properly. That is the biggest improvement. We understand that the larger the airport gets, the more likely you are to have a number of silos. This application helps break down those silos and allow us to communicate between departments very easily.
I'd like to mention too.
Yeah, go for it, John.
I'd like to mention too that there's also the unknown cost of not having a system like this. And so I'd like to mention that, there's return on investment that you can see, you can quantifiable data, but there's that unknown. If there was not efficiency and speed and agility in doing your asset management or safety management, there's the potential that something bad could happen, and then there's a excess cost, or a fine, or a civil suit. So there's a lot of unknowns out there that you can consider for cost and savings down the road.
Yeah, this one could either, I think, be for Tim or Eve. Eve, you talked about the on-prem versus cloud. if you have an on-prem now, what does it look like to transition from that on-prem to the cloud?
So I'll take a first stab at it. I think it does depend on what system you're using and whether it's migrating, lifting that from a solution that's on premises and just putting it in infrastructure as a service, Azure IaaS as an example, or if you're using a system that also has software as a service as a capability and what that conversion looks like. So there may be some dependencies. The differences of different types of cloud implementations, like I just mentioned, infrastructure as a service is like moving it from your data center to the Microsoft data center, right? But you're still going to be, your IT team will still be responsible for managing the updates, whereas but you don't have the physical responsibility of the data center storage and hardware. Whereas if it's software as a service, that means that the software vendor is assuming those responsibilities of those updates, for example, and you're just managing your specific data, but you're not managing all of those other components. And that's something that, again, I would be eager to speak to directly, eve.mccall@microsoft.com, if you have specific questions for me. I know that Trimble is undergoing product improvements themselves, so there may be a specific element to that, John, that you might answer. And then Tim, obviously, in your own journey, those are kind of three different versions of three different style answers to the question, Nick. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, there's definitely, I can't speak smartly on the conversion from on-prem to cloud, but I can tell you that the Microsoft partnership is strong within Trimble, and several of our products are going to be hosted via Microsoft. And I will mention this, that, if you want to keep your data secure, you got to go with Azure. There you go, Eve. I promise you I would say
I
it.
love that. I didn't make that up, but.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent point, Eve. When we started, the issue for us was FAA and the security of the data that we were storing. HIPAA information, FAA specific information, our 139 stuff. And at the time, the capability really didn't exist 13 years ago to be trusted in a cloud environment. Now, the improvements, vast improvements. So it's all dependent on what an airport is comfortable with, where they want to put their information and their data, who's going to support it. Do they have a CityWorks team? The smaller the airport gets, the more cost effective and advantageous it is for them to have someone host it for them versus a larger entity that has a full-blown IT staff that can take care of all those things. They still may have it in the cloud, but ours is a virtual environment, still all hosted in-house. But yeah, we are investigating the process of moving a number of things to a cloud environment, just from a cost effectiveness and a safety standpoint.
I'm glad you mentioned the government component. So I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I've been with Microsoft almost 8 years, started on the federal side where, the emergence of FedRAMP as a security compliance mechanism was burgeoning, right? And I'm proud to state that Microsoft, even our Microsoft commercial cloud, as it's called, has FedRAMP certification. So there is the recognition from the federal government that, we do have FedRAMP moderate and high, and we even have, with certain other sovereign cloud capabilities, DoD level accreditation, if you will, regarding FedRAMP. So, the federal government has taken ever more cloud first kind of posture. As time has gone on, and there's been, the ability for companies like Microsoft to demonstrate that our customers' data is secure in our data center. And I would even argue that, Microsoft is in the data business. It is our core job. It is not an airport's core job. And so let us be entrusted to do our core job and enable you to focus on the data itself and the mission. rather than having to worry about the data security side of it.
That looks like all the questions we have, all the time we have. Thanks again, everybody, for joining our webinar. As John mentioned, we do have the second webinar in our series with Microsoft. That is on June 8th. Registration will be open pretty soon. And if I'm correct, Eve, you're going to be returning for that one, correct?
I sure am.
Right, we'll have that one will come out. So, but for today, props to Tim, Eve, and John for putting on a great presentation. The video and the slides of this will be available in the next handful of days. Please stick around after the conclusion of the webinar. We do have a quick survey for follow-up. If you have any additional questions, John's email is on there, but you can also reach out to Tim and Eve. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day and be on the lookout for our future airport webinars coming pretty soon.
Thanks.